Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Xenoshin here, and today I'm going to be going over a deck list profile for a deck that I brought to the online premiere that just happened this past weekend, the first ever Firestorm Discord webcam premiere, and the deck I brought was Hestia Box. This deck, honestly, in my opinion, was really fun, and I think going forward, I'm definitely interested in trying to fix this up. I have a couple tweaks that I feel like I would definitely add to this deck. I think, changing a couple things would be something that I'd definitely be doing in the future. But this in testing, it does very well. The only downside in this current format that I'd see is if you brick, sometimes you are bricking very hard. So I'm going to go over the deck list, and from there, I'm also going to kind of explain a little bit of the changes that I would make and potentially like what I would take out going forward. So let's get started with that. So first thing is the Elestrals. Now for the Elestrals of the deck, it's a pretty decent split. So first off, we have the Bear package. So the Bear package consists of 3 Ursa. This is your main searcher. This is your main searcher, your main enabler. Everything that goes on it with this deck, you pretty much always want to run through this first. It allows you to search your deck for any Bear card in your deck, and going forward, this honestly is going to be the key to everything this deck wants to do. Next up, you're going to want to play 2 Ursmog. Ursmog is another really good Elestral. Pretty much, you can expend a fire in order to special cast out another 1-drop bear, and it allows you to help swarm the board for potential plays going forward. Next up, we have 2 of the new Urscout Champion of Hestia. This is probably one of the few Elestrals in this deck that I would say are very controversial on whether or not I keep or I would take out. I'd say if you're trying to go more of a Hestia Box strategy, the Hestia Box strategy is something that you would kind of keep this with because it allows you to search for your Champion of Hestia cards. So on special cast, Urscout can have you search your deck for a Champion of Hestia card and add it to hand. So you're really wanting it for a Hestia deck or a Hestia box deck, not so much a Bear turbo deck, but I would say this is a 50-50 on whether or not I would keep this or not. Next up, you have 2 Ursa Champion of Hestia, the only Champion of Hestia that is a Bear other than Urscout right now. So it is one of the best bosses that this deck can have access to, and I think is the main boss that everyone would say. I'm running 2 solely for the fact that you want to be able to consistently pop stuff on your opponent's board. On summon, this gets to blow up cards on your opponent's board equal to the number of Bear Elestrals you control. So you can go between having 1 pop with just herself, or up to 4 pops if your whole board is completely filled with bears. As well as the fact that she also buffs up every bear you control equal to the number of spirits enchanting a Hestia. So honestly, she is a really good card, and having her at 2 gives you more of a chance to search off of Urscout, or being able to just guarantee getting one out and keeping it out. Because if your opponent outs the first one, you at least have a second one that you can fall back on. I truly think running 2 is a necessity. The last bear in the deck, though, at least in the main board, is 1 regular Ursa. Regular Ursa, in my opinion, is a card that I really like, and I would say is something of a more personal pick. So it's a 12/12 that says she gets +2 for every other bear on your field. So she'll always continuously get more power, and the other big thing is your 1 Spirit Bear Elestrals cannot be targeted for attacks or by card effects, meaning she protects all of your bears. Now, you don't really have that many 1-drop bears that she can truly protect, which is why a lot of people would say to take her out. But this deck can be able to turbo into a Majursa of any kind going first, like literally the turn 1 of the game. So this is one of those cards that I personally would say keep it in the deck for the going first. And then if you know you're going second in going into games 2 or 3, you can always side her out, because most times over not, you're only ever wanting to go into her on the first ever turn of the game when your opponent has nothing set. Because if they have anything set, you're always going to want to go into this Majursa. So, alright. From there, the other half of the Elestral package are all of the Hestia box cards, like the ones that are more just Champion of Hestia. So it runs 3 Torchin, Champion of Hestia, 3 Warmite, Champion of Hestia, and then 2 Amphirix, Champion of Hestia. Torchin, pretty much a guaranteed addition to the deck, even after I would change some aspects of it. On cast, you get to search your deck for a Hestia or Torch a Hestia and add it to hand, as well as its second ability to Nexus a Fire over from one area to another. In future decks, I would probably run this down to 2 instead of 3, just solely because you want to see Hestia, and you don't really want to see the summoner to search for Hestia. I was asking about some advice, and I think this was probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I was given. So probably putting Torchin down to 2. 1 might be pushing it, but definitely seeing Torchin at between 1 and 2 going forward would be a big thing. Warmite, pretty much just your biggest Hestia box card. When this Warmite receives a fire, you get to reduce any Elestral's attack by 3 for the turn. And then, whenever any player casts Hestia's Hearth, you can return up to 2 fire spirits from your underworld back to the deck. So this does a really good combination with Hestia's Hearth that can almost allow you to control your opponent's field and heal you at the same time. And I think going forward, any changes I would do, I would probably keep Warmite at between 2 and 3, just solely off the fact that it's such a necessity for a Hestia box strategy. And I think even going forward, just having it as a potential just side option would be really, really good. The last one, as I had said, was Amphirix. Amphirix, honestly, is the one Elestral I would definitely take out of the deck. So I love this card. I love this design. Like, this design for the Stellar is super, super cool. And I love the effect. So the effect is you can disenchant 1 fire from Hestia in order to return a 1 spirit fire Elestral from your underworld and add it back to your hand, which is your Ursmog, your Urscout, your Torchin, Warmite, and of course, Amphirix. In this deck, though, it's less useful. I really wanted to use this for its second effect, which is when you ascend over this Amphirix, during the end phase, you can special cast it out from the underworld with fire. So if you had to play this for a turn, and then on the next turn, or if you have a way to have Amphirix already out on the board, and you ascend over Amphirix with a Majursa or your other Majursa, like either of the bears, you're able to actually, at the end phase, bring it back out. I love that effect, and in testing, sometimes that would be really useful. However, I think going forward, it's going to be one of the few cards that I definitely just remove from the deck entirely. I want to be able to use this card, however, this sadly was not the deck for it, and it did end up bricking me a lot. Like, this part of the deck was the biggest issue when I was playing it, and I think going into future builds of this, when I'll update this video as well, I'll make a new one, and I'll explain, like, pretty much you're just wanting to reduce the number of non-bears in, like, the Hestia box strategy, just solely off the fact that this Hestia box is not so much fully fleshed out just yet. We do need a couple more sets in order to make Hestia box fully valid of a strategy. But I think going into the future, the parts of that I 100% will continue to adapt and put into future builds of this deck. Going to the runes, it's a very standard generic package of 3 Ambrosia for healing, 3 Gorgon's Gaze, as it is the best card in this game for interaction. Being able to both stun your opponent's cards, stop their Elestrals from activating their effects, suppressing them, preventing them from being from attacking, and also stopping them from nexusing or receiving enchantments, which honestly is one of the biggest things going forward in a lot of decks. Like some decks actually you can stop fully by Gorgonsing them because of the fact that it's not so much that they're getting an effect as much as you've now stopped them from having a nexus target or some way to enchant onto them. And then, of course, you can't ascend over. So it just really is a great way to stop your opponent from doing anything. 2 shield, very self-explanatory, just bounces an opponent's Celestial that's attacking back to their hand. And then, in my opinion, one of the biggest cards in this deck is 2 Nectar of the Gods. Nog is such a necessary card that I cannot fully explain why. Other than just saying it truly is one of the best cards. It enables you it enables your ability to actually play into the turbo variant of this deck with the bears. And that's solely because of the next part of the deck, which is the bear setup. So the bear runes in this deck are 3 Hibernation and then 2 Ursa Den. The Ursa Den, simply because you have 3 Ursicle to search it out. You have a couple ways in order to try and get this. So, like, you're almost guaranteed to see it with the amount of searching that you have. Nog also gets you more cards into the deck, and because you have Hibernation at 3 and Den at 2, I don't think you need it at 3. You're almost guaranteed to at least open up one of them, if not both. And if you're not opening up either, that's why there is the other route that this deck has to kind of be able to, supplement until then. Honestly, though, because of the way that Hibernation works, so this is a brand new card that came out in Firestorm. This says, for 1 Frost, you can only play it if you have a Bear Elestral on your board. You target up to 2 Fire or Frost Spirits in your Underworld, and either return them to the Spirit deck, or put them underneath Ursa Den. And then, of course, you draw a card afterwards. So that's really good because you can Nog, get 2 Spirits in the Underworld, have a Bear out on board, put Ursa Den out, and then Hibernation puts the 2 Spirits underneath Ursa Den. And then Ursa Den, the only reason you're playing it is because when you have 4 Spirits underneath it, 2 from itself, 2 from Hibernation, you can then search your deck for any bear and summon it to the board. You get to freely summon out your Majursa, and by doing so, you can get into the rest of the deck. You're board wiping your opponent, you're bringing out a bunch of aggression. It's super, super necessary. So that's also why I kind of kept these out here, because these are probably very necessary to kind of talk in tandem. Next up is the Hestia part of the deck. So the Hestia part of the deck runs 2 Hestia and then 3 Hestia's Hearth. Now, going forward, one big change that I would have is you're gonna add a 3rd Hestia. It's such a necessity that's why I originally ran 3 Torchen, because I was like, oh, I'll just run 3 Torchen, and this way I'll have multiple chances to see Hestia. Instead, I now realize it's better to actually see Hestia than rely on the summon for the Hestia. But Hestia is a big enabler for the deck, because similar to every other Divine, on cast you can put up to 3 more Spirits, making her 4 Spirits underneath. When you can use her effect to remove 2 Spirits from her, and special cast out a 1 Spirit Fire from your hand and put onto the board. that is really, really strong because that helps set up your board with either a bear to then bring out a second bear that can bring out another bear, or you can bring out the Earth Scout to search for another card that can then bring out, like say, your Warmite or another Torchon to search out something else. Like, you have multiple options, and it all stems from Hestia. Now, you can only do that if the amount of Elestrals on your board are equal to or less than the number of Elestrals on your opponent's board. Which is great, because going first, your opponent has none, and you have none. Meaning you can immediately activate her effect on turn 1. And then the other big card, like I said, was Hestia's Hearth. This makes huge game-changing plays. So it's counter rune for 1 fire that says you can enchant a fire from your underworld to anywhere on your field. This, I think, is going to be really big for a lot of fire decks, because just getting to enchant from the underworld means you're essentially healing a little bit. But the big thing is all of the effects that have on receive. And in this deck, the big on receive effect is Warmite. And then the big thing is, then if the card that you targeted was a Hestia or a champion of Hestia, you can then enchant another fire from your underworld to it. So because that's 2 separate interactions of enchanting, if it targeted your Warmite, that means it's 2 separate instances of you minusing a power from an opponent's Elestral. And then, like I said, because now you casted Hearth, you heal 2 fire. So it's just a really good card nonetheless. Then the last 2 cards in this deck are Resting on Your Laurels and Pandora's Box. Pandora's Box, I think, is a really, really good card. Not one that you're going to be playing over a third Gorgons, but it, I think, is an extra copy of Gorgons. So whenever your opponent would activate a card or an effect that searches their deck for a card and adds it to hand, or for a card and casts it out, or special sends it out, this card will negate that effect and make your opponent mill the top 2 cards of their deck. This is really strong because of the fact that this meta and this new format has a lot of cards that are trying to search your deck for something. You know, Ant-Titan is really big. A lot of the Zeus cards can search out. I'm trying to think. There's Majesty with Old Globby. There's a lot. Nixamara. So there's a good amount of cards. One I did forget. Fire, artifacts. So artifacts and, of course, bears, because bears are searching their deck too. Pandora's Box can shut down an Ursa Den with ease. And it's scary how quickly you can shut down an opponent's deck because of it. And then the last one is Laurels. So Laurels is just a really good, really cheap removal. As long as your opponent has 2 or more spirits than you, you can destroy the lowest enchanted Elestral they control. It's a card that I'm iffy on. Sometimes I do side it out just solely off the fact that it doesn't seem as helpful. If I'm always running more spirits on my field than my opponent, it ends up being a dead card for me. But honestly, it's still a really good card nonetheless. Going to the spirit lineup, this is probably the most basic spirit lineup that you'll ever see. You run a total of 14 fire, and then, sorry for the camera, 14 fire and 6 frost. You don't have that many frost in your deck right now, but you really don't need that much frost. And fire is very, very heavy because a lot of your deck, the majority of it, is fire. So I don't really see the need of running any other elements. Possibly, I would say, if you were to change this up a bit, you might add some water for maybe a tsunami, or for tsunami proofing your Elestrals, but to be fair, it's not really a necessity. I think if you're gonna try and do something like that, you can just add in Alter the Stars, which uses your Nexus banks to swap positions which is essentially like a tsunami. And you can do that at any element, so I don't really see the need for any other element in the Spirit deck. That's just me, though. Going into the side deck, some of these side deck cards I truly believe should be in the main deck. So going forward, I can definitely say that the first bit of this, you would probably side in right away and just swap out some of the cards. So starting, you have your bear package with 2 Ursa, 2 Don't Poke the Bear, 1 Abomin Ursa, and 1 Ursa Coat. Ursa Coat, honestly, is one of those cards that I can say you could swap out and put in another bear of any other kind, maybe a second A-Bomb, but A-Bomb, all it does is it gets bigger for every other bear you control. It's not really doing much, and because it's no longer your ace card to try and beat down your opponent's stuff, it's less necessary. And because there's still a good amount of suppression going around, it becomes less useful, because if they suppress this, it goes back down to a 3. Don't Poke is honestly one of the best cards that I regret not putting in the main deck, and I would say going forward, this is something that's really good. It's a 1-drop counter rune that gives your bears +4/+4, or gives a bear +4/+4 during the battle phase. Meaning, as a battle trick, you can always buff yourself up in your defense and your attack, giving yourself so much viability and survivability on any card that you control. And then last but not least, you have the Ursa. Like I said, Ursa is a really good card, because when it destroys an Elestral, you can search your deck for a 1-drop bear and summon it out. And this probably is one that I would recommend putting in, just swapping it in with some of the cards that you are going to be taking out of the deck. So the last part of the side deck ended up just being very generic removal and other just generic good cards that fall between the Frost and Fire element. So I ran 2 Cryoblast, 2 Blizzard, 2 Eruption, a Lavalith, a Rise from the Ashes, and a Spoiled Fruit. So Cryoblast, very simple. It reduces an opponent's Elestral that's not Frost enchanted, reduces their defense by 2, and if that defense were to go to 0, you destroy them. Blizzard, it's uninteractable. You target a face-down rune your opponent controls and destroy it. Really, really good removal. Eruption, if you're not playing against a fire deck, it's such a good card to side in games 2 and 3. I ended up seeing a lot of fire this premiere, so I never really sided it in outside of one of the rounds. However, it's such a good card that I would say still keep it in, because if you're not playing against a fire deck, this is great going into games 2 and 3. Just for 2 fire, you burn your opponent for 3. Lavalith, just a really good card if your opponent has more spirits than you on the field, by 2 at least. Summon it out without a tribute, and then for on summon, you get to blow up an opponent's rune. Really, really good. Rise, another just way to keep your Majursa on board. So if you're going second, you're going second, you can side out your old Majursa for a Rise, so that if they out the one Majursa, you can always just summon it back out. And Spoiled Fruit, just to counter healing. If your opponent were to try to heal, you can stop it with that. Overall, I would say this deck is very, very fun. I like it a lot, and I really, really wanted to make Hestia Box work. I wanted to see if Hestia Box could work with the bears in tandem and not really hinder it as much. I would say it did a pretty decent job, but there were obvious tweaks that like I explained in the video, would definitely want to change. And then going forward, you could definitely see I will definitely promise that there will be an updated list for this in the future. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoy this type of content and want to see more, please consider subscribing and liking the video. And hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.